The following morning, Nick had to unlock the office and let himself in. It was usually Matt who arrived first. He liked to get there 30 minutes before his son in order to enjoy his alone time with a newspaper before getting down to the private investigations business at hand. Nick hung his jacket on the coat rack and looked up at the clock over the office door. It was already 2 minutes past 9, and Matt was never known to show up late unless he had to leave from home to go to a client's house. And this was not the case this morning, and Nick figured that his father must have just stopped at the corner pretzel stand for his morning fix. He'd give him a few more minutes. A moment later, the office phone on Nick's desk rang. "Cooper Investigations, Nick speaking." "I suppose you're wondering why I'm not already there, reading my paper?" "The thought had crossed my mind," Nick said. "Where are you?" "I got a call on my cell phone just after I left the house this morning. It was Bob Anderson's secretary." "Bob Anderson," Nick said in a faraway voice. "Nope, doesn't ring any bells." "The assistant district attorney?" Matt explained. "She said that her boss would like to meet with me early, so that's where I'm headed now." "You're headed to City Hall?" "No," Matt said. "She told me he wanted to meet me away from the office, away from prying eyes and curious ears, so to speak." "And where exactly would that be?" "I have no idea. She said she'd call me again in a few minutes once Bob decided where a good place to meet would be. That reminds me, I'm supposed to be waiting for her to call, so I'd better get off the phone. I'll talk to you later." He disconnected without waiting for Nick's formal goodbye. He was still heading south on Cahuenga, like the first call instructed. A moment later, as he sat waiting for the light to change, his cell phone rang again. "Cooper," Matt said. It was the same female voice as before. "Mr. Cooper, Attorney Anderson instructed me to tell you where he'd like to meet with you." She proceeded to read off the directions to the rendezvous. Matt drove through the intersection and pulled into the corner gas station so he could write the directions down. But did he say? The woman on the other end had already disconnected the call. Matt closed his phone and dropped it back into his pocket. He ripped the page from his notepad and set it on his center console. The place his secretary had described was still 24 blocks away. Matt glanced at his watch. It would be all of 9:30 before he could get there. At the rendezvous point, Assistant District Attorney Anderson walked into the alley, a large, burly-armed gunman following close behind. "Where are we going?" he said over his shoulder. "Just keep moving," the gunman said. "I'll tell you when it's far enough." When they'd gone another 30 feet, the gunman said, "This is far enough. You just stand there and don't say a word. You get that?" "But—" The gunman stuck his revolver in Anderson's back and said, "I'm not going to tell you again. Keep your yap shut." A few minutes later, the gunman heard an engine die and a car door slam. He crossed the alley and backed up into the shadows, telling Anderson to stand there like a statue or he'd plug him from where he stood. "When our guest gets here, just call out his name and then don't say another word. You just let him do the talking." Matt got out of his car and checked his surroundings. This was the place, all right, but why on earth would anyone want to meet in such a remote location as this? He didn't question it any further and just continued further into the alley. Just as he passed a stack of boxes, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Cooper," Anderson called out, then said nothing further. Matt turned quickly toward the sound of the voice and saw Bob Anderson standing just beyond the boxes. Matt breathed easier now. "Mr. Anderson," he said, "what's with all this cloak and dagger? I've never imagined a man like you meeting anyone in a place like this." Anderson didn't respond, trying to convey what he wanted to say with just his eyes. He moved them quickly up and to the left, trying to indicate the man who was now tiptoeing up behind the PI. Anderson's eyes got even wider, and by the time Matt realized something wasn't right, it was too late. The gunman's big forearm wrapped around Matt's neck and got him in a headlock. Matt struggled, but in vain, and as the gunman applied more pressure, Matt began to feel more and more lightheaded. A few seconds after that, he passed out and dropped to the pavement.